One of the most insane things to me ever is the fact that dreams are so colorful. Does anybody else here besides me have some crazy, messed up dreams? Go ahead. You got to talk with me tonight a little bit today, this morning. You have to talk to me and say hello. I preach better. I'm just telling you right now, it's universal with all speakers out there. If you'll give them a little bit of support, they'll preach better. I'm just telling you, it's just the truth. But I have some messed up dreams sometimes, and they're colorful, and they're vivid, and I can't remember them when I wake up. You guys, I'm always like that. And what I'm always amazed at is how sometimes they mean something into my life. And so what I want to do with you today is just for a second is can I share with you a couple of my crazy messed up dreams? Because although I forget most of them, there's 3 of them that I never forgot. Does anybody else here have a dream that you've never forgotten? And you want to sometimes, and sometimes you don't, right? This is what I want to do. First dream, it goes something like this. As a child, we all have that nightmare that we can never forget. And I had this nightmare in my life, and it scared the bejeebies out of me, and I want to tell you about it. Do you guys remember that cartoon Tailspin? I loved some Tailspin when I was a kid. And Baloo would fly that, and Kit was in the plane. There were these bears, and they would deliver packages. Man, that was one of my favorite cartoons of all time. But then my nightmare involves Baloo because he was my hero at the moment, you know. And so here we are. I'm with Baloo and I'm with Kit, and we're flying to this airplane, and we're going to deliver some packages for some reason to like a 7-Eleven. And so we fly into the back of this gas station, and we land, and we're unloading all of these packages. And as we're unloading these packages, we have to take them to the freezer, right? And so it's one of these walk-in freezers that you go into, one of those. And so here we go. We're walking into this freezer, and I notice a trap door. And so there's this trap door down there, and me and Baloo are like, well, I wonder what's down there. What's going on? And so he reaches down with his big bear strength, and he opens that door. And when he opens it up, it was so majestic, man. It was like this ice cave underneath the freezer. And so I'm like, we got to go check this out. That's what we got to do. We got to check this out. Baloo and Blue's like, all right, let's do this. And so we jump down into this ice cave. And while we're in this ice cave, we're exploring. And I mean, if you can just imagine, you know, like all the crystals sparkling, and it's all white, and it's amazing looking. And we're just in awe of everything that's going on. And as we're walking through there, exploring this ice cave underneath this freezer at a 7-Eleven in the middle of nowhere, we come across some polar bears. I don't know what polar bears were doing under a 7-Eleven, but I guess it kind of makes sense that they're polar bears in an ice cave. And so I'm here, and I'm with Baloo, and we're like, all right, if we're going to keep on going, what do we got to do? I'm going to have to sneak by these polar bears. All went well until I kicked one of them. You know how it happens. You're clumsy, you're a little child. I kicked one of them, and we're scared, and me and Baloo are backing up. Then all of a sudden, here's my worst fear comes true. This polar bear stands up. And I don't know how big polar bears really are, but I know that this polar bear had to be at least 20 foot tall. And when it looked at me, you know, this is a child's nightmare. This is what this was for me. He looked at me, and he had these big, like, blood-dripping teeth. That's what was happening right here. These blood-dripping teeth were coming down, and they were falling everywhere, and me and Baloo were scared, and so we were screaming, and we take off running, and we're running back to the 7-Eleven, trying to get back to the ice cave. And of course, this polar bear is right behind me, and it's growling, and it's nipping at me, and it's yelling at me, and I'm afraid. And so we finally get back to where we jump up into that drop-in at the 7-Eleven, and you know Baloo had to go first. I don't know why he had to go first, but he jumps up in there first. And when he gets up in there, this bear is like right here. It's right here. Then all of a sudden, Baloo, I remember this, he throws down like these attic stairs, you know, and he throws them down for me. And so I jump and I grab on these attic stairs, and I'm climbing up. And as I'm climbing up, of course, this bear grabs me on the back of my leg. It's like, ah! And I'm like, ah! You know, all this is going on at one time, and I'm afraid to death. Then, of course, Baloo grabs me, and he jerks me away, and I'm safe. We get into his airplane, and we fly off. I've never forgotten that. I'm scarred. I'm going to be real honest with you. It scared me to death. And then the second dream I have it's a different dream. How many in here has ever had that dream where you just keep falling? It's a weird dream. They say, if you hit the ground, you could die. That's what I heard sometimes. Somebody say, fortunately, I didn't hit the ground. Here's the way this dream went for me. Second crazy dream. I was really into skateboarding. Me and my brother, that was our thing, man. We were like 13. It was the coolest thing on planet Earth. X Game was blowing up. It was a new thing happening, And so we're going to become these professional, awesome skateboarders. And for some reason in my dream, I dreamed that I was skateboarding in San Francisco on the Golden Gate Bridge. And not only was I skating on the Golden Gate Bridge, what happened, if any of you guys played video games, there was this game out at the time, and it was Tony Hawk Pro Skater, right? And you could do these insane tricks on Tony Hawk Pro Skater. You could do this, and it didn't make any sense, but it was possible. And so here I was, and I ollied up onto the big red round pillars that hold up this bridge. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, I've been there, right? These things are like, they're not just this big, they're like 30 foot wide. I didn't know this in my dream as a 13-year-old. And so I'm jumping up on these things and I'm grinding them, right? And then I'm turning it and I'm board sliding on them. Then all of a sudden I'm going to do the biggest kick flip of all time, right? And so I launched off this bridge with the ocean underneath me, and my plan was to do a kick flip all the way onto dry land. I remember this. And as I began flipping, my board kept flipping, and it kept flipping, and it kept flipping, and it kept flipping, and I never hit the ground. And then I just kind of went to another dream or woke up one, something like that happened. But that dream never made much sense to me, but it always happened. And then there was this third dream. Now, this third dream is completely different. It's a dream that I have never forgotten, but I've never forgotten for the purpose that God spoke it into my life, and I truly believe it. I began to dream this dream. I think I was around 5 years old the first time I ever dreamed this. And I was a little boy, and I remember seeing myself standing on a stage. And I was standing on a stage, and there was a band that was behind me. And there was all these lights going off, and all these crazy things were happening. And I was standing there, and I was speaking. I never really understood what that dream meant to me. All I know is I continued to dream that dream my entire life. And my dad asked me to come speak. And as I was sleeping and resting after the night that he asked me to come speak, I dreamed this dream again. But it all changes. Because I'm not a 5-year-old little boy again. I'm now an older man, and you always see yourself how you are at the present time. But what I want to show you, the difference between these two dreams, as crazy as they mean and as unbelievable as they seem, the first two dreams were just fears of a child. They were just things that I thought would be possible, and that would be crazy cool if it happened. But then there was this dream that spoke into my heart, and I truly believe that God placed it deep inside of me. And Abraham begins to have these dreams. And they sounded to him probably a little crazy. And they sounded to him a little insane. If anybody else was around him, if he shared this dream with these people, they would probably look at him like, that is completely unbelievable, Abraham. What are you talking about? And for so long, I didn't understand why on earth was I dreaming this dream. I mean, I thought, man, am I supposed to be like the next Ryan Seacrest? Am I going to be a host of TV programs? Me and AC Slater, old Mario, we're going to kick it, and we're going to do these things together. Is this who I'm going to be, Or am I going to be like a rock star? But the problem is I couldn't sing at all, I was like, is this going to happen? But I did not understand for so long until I began to truly believe in Christ. And when I truly came to a relationship with Christ, that I believed Him without questioning Him, that's when I began to understand the dream and the promise that God had placed into my life. Romans 4:16 and 17 goes like this. It says, "For Abraham is the father," hear this, "of all who believe." That's what scriptures say when God told him, "I made you the father of many nations." And this happened because Abraham believed in the God who brings the dead back to life and who creates new things out of nothing. So here's the question that I want to pose to you today. Why is it still so hard for us to believe? Why is it so difficult for us truly to accept the fact that God wants us to do these things in our life? Why do we constantly doubt Him? And it's a very true statement if we get into the fact that we are a very busy culture. More like anything, our culture is becoming more and more busy, but it's also becoming more and more convenient. I'm not very sure that I like how this is all working out, but it's what's happening. And if you look at our children, I heard someone who once said that our children will never know what it means to leave your work at the office. And that's so true, because if we're honest with ourselves, we work everywhere we go. We work in our bed, we work at our school, we're taking our kids to school, we work at watching our kids play baseball, we work when we come to church, because all we have to do is pull out our cell phones. And I was sitting over here a while ago and someone for my church was asking me a question, how to do something, while you were singing worship songs, man. And I had to reply real quick. I'm like, really? Seriously right now? And I'm over here and I'm clicking this thing. Everywhere we go, it's possible to work because it's convenient that everything has came through smartphones and through all these computers. But my fear is this. Hear me. My fear is that in this conveniently busy life that we all now live, that we don't make enough time to listen, or sometimes any time to realize the dreams and the promises that God has placed inside of our life. I believe sometimes we just completely block them out because we're so busy. It's as if we count them as good ideas. You know, those people who always say, I believe that someone should do this. Someone should do this in our church. And here's what I always tell everybody when they come up with this great idea. Man, we really need someone to serve in this area. Man, we really need God to do someone. I said, you're the person, Jack. Because someone placed that on you and it wasn't me. But what happens here is God does that. I would rather count them as a good idea rather than my God-given purpose here on this earth. Because then I don't have to take responsibility of it, and I don't have to make sure that I see it all the way through. And it's easy as a child. Now, my son believes. I can tell him something, and he believes what I say. I was laughing real hard because the other night, I love some Funniest Home Videos. Love Funniest Home Videos. Me and Judah, we lay in the bed and we watch Funniest Home Videos at night. And so me and Judah are kicking it. We're laying in the bed, and there's this little child who was wearing a Superman costume. And I'm sure maybe some of you had seen this, but this is my favorite because I laughed real hard. And so this little child dressed up in the Superman costume, and he has this cape flowing, and he has everything going, and his dad's sitting on the couch, and you see him get up, and I saw it in his eyes, man. I just saw it coming. He climbs on top of the coffee table in his complete Superman outfit pajamas, right? And he stands on top of this coffee table just like this, and just does this. I mean, he was gone. I'm talking. That's exactly what happened to this kid. But this kid truly believed that when he jumped, he was going to make it, man. He was Superman, and it's about to happen in his life, and I'm going to fly. And as a child, it's so easy to accept the truth that the impossible is possible. But as we get older, what happens to us is we become consumed by life. Because what does life bring? Life brings pressure, life brings responsibilities, and it brings bills, and it brings children. And we replace that great idea, that impulse in our life, or which I believe God puts inside of us. We replace these ideas and these gifts and these talents with a realistic responsibility that a desire then becomes unrealistic. That's what happens to us. I'm too busy. I got too much going. Yeah, that was a great idea. I really wish I could have done that. But you know what? I got this going on in my life right now. And what I want all of you to do today is I want you to take your hand. I want you to put it out here in front of you. Come on, y'all are looking dead at me. I want you to put your hand, and I want you to reach it behind you. And just grab it and pull it in. I want every one of us today to reach back, and I want you to grab that dream. I want you to grab that promise, that talent, that gift, that desire that I truly believe. It's a gift, it's a talent, it's a desire that was not put in there by my own self, but it's something that God birthed inside of me at the point of my conception, because it is something that He wishes for me to fulfill in my life. I need you to reach back, and I need you to grab that and says, I'm sorry, God, for putting that on the back burner. Let me today bring this back to the front of my life and remember it. Can you do that for me today? I want you to hang on to that for a few minutes with me. Because the dream that I started out having as a young boy, that I didn't understand, still lives inside of me today. It's never died. It's never gone anywhere. But it's lived in my life forever. And if I'm honest with you, I put it aside for years. I abandoned it because of friends and going to college and hanging out and having a good time, and I wanted to do all that. So I pushed it to the side. But what never happened is I was never able to forget this dream that God had birthed inside of me. I was never able to get rid of it out of my life, because what I truly believe is the same way that God spoke to Abraham through a dream. God spoke a promise to Abraham through a dream. And without a question in my mind, I believe that God spoke a promise into my life that He said, I will never let you forget. But it took me so long to begin to understand why. It's a promise that if you or I will continually pursue, that if we'll grab onto with everything inside of us, that if you will just believe it, He will continue to make it true in your life. Somebody needs to take that today, and you just need to digest that into your heart. You need to say, God, just say this with me, God, there's a promise that you've put in my life. And today, I want to continue to make it real. You need to take that. You need to run with it as hard as you can, because it is God's heart, and that He puts a desire inside of us that we are to fulfill. Not a desire that we are to forget, not a desire that we are to push aside, but it's something that requires you to pursue Him with your complete being, with everything inside of you. You must be obedient to Him, but more than anything else, and hear this, you have to believe. Abraham was the father of believing. It's something that he never forgot, something that he never doubted, but something that he always pursued. And understand that Abraham's belief is the standard. It is the definition by which God desires us to have faith in Him. That is why Abraham was the first. He said, I'm going to make an example out of you for man for all time. So grab a hold of this. And if I'm honest with you, what happened is He came to Abraham. He tells them, your descendants are going to cover all the earth. And so this dream, this comes to Abraham. And if I am Abraham, and if I'm honest with you today, I'm going to struggle with it. That's reality. I'm going to struggle with what God told me, because it's going to go something like this. It's going to say, God, I don't even have a son. How on earth am I going to have descendants through all the earth if I don't even have a son? All this wealth that Abraham had accumulated was actually going to go to his servant. Did you guys know that? That's crazy to me. So the Bible actually tells us that Abraham was a wealthy man. He was a wealthy man in land. He was a wealthy man in cattle. He was even a wealthy man in gold. This man, he had wealth. And all this wealth that he had accumulated was just going to go to one of his servants. That's who is to be passed on to. But God told him that He's going to make him descendant through all the earth. And I understand, that how am I going to have a child, God? I'm getting real old. Now, people lived a long time back then. And Abraham said, if you'll go through Genesis and begin to read how old these people are, you have these people who are living 400, 300, 200 years, right? But what I didn't notice is every time it mentions that they have a descendant or that they have a son, they were always between the age of 20 and 50 years old. That's when they had this child. And Abraham was sitting here saying, he said, God, I know you promised me this, and I know you told me this was going to happen, but I'm getting real old. I'm getting up here to the 100-year mark, And my wife, she's old. Her womb it's probably dried up now. Can she even conceive a child? And all these things. If I am Abraham, I'm not. It's going to be so hard for me to believe it. I don't know if I can grab a hold of it. But although everything seems impossible, Abraham still believed. He never stopped. How? How did Abraham still believe? Romans 4:21 says this. He was fully convinced that God is able to do whatever He promises. And you need to take that, and you never need to forget that. The standard by which we are to have faith, The example by which we are to base our belief in tells us that God will do whatever He says He will do into your life. And you don't need to let that go. Our problem is that we like the idea of God, that God is this person, or God is this God that can make the impossible possible. We love the idea of it. We love to receive that and worship that and thank that. But when it all comes down to it and we're tested, the truth is we doubt what we know inside. That's truth. We want to say we believe, but whenever you got to put your money on the line, or when you got to put your life or your career on the line, you start doubting. And you start questioning, is this really what I'm supposed to do? So we talk ourselves out of fulfilling these dreams that God has birthed inside of our life. And I will never be able to do that. I will never be able to accomplish that because maybe I'm too young, or this will never work out for me because, I'm past my prime. I'm too old. And I've heard so many people sit there and tell me, I will never get to do this in my life because I'm not smart enough, because I don't have the gift to make this happen, because I don't have the talent. Let me tell you something that I noticed in the Bible the other day, and I thought it was so interesting. Jesus chooses these 12 disciples, but have you ever paid attention to the 12 disciples that Jesus chooses to be His example? They were just normal people. They were fishermen. That's who He chose. And so the reason Jesus chooses these 12 normal people is because I want to show to the entire world that these normal people, through me and in my example, I can be glorified and I can make them accomplish things that no man would be able to accomplish. It was the point that I can take you and your simple self, and I don't mean to call you simple, but He said I can take this simple person and I can use him an example to allow me to be glorified through him, so that all the world will see who I am because of what I did in your life. You got that? That is what this means. And I always thought that was so interesting. But God wants us to understand that Abraham was able to achieve everything he did, not because the circumstances weren't bad, not because the circumstances seemed impossible, because if we're honest, it seemed unrealistic. It made no sense to anybody at the time. It didn't make sense to Abraham sometimes. It wasn't easy. But the fact is, Abraham still believed. And you can't let go of what you believe. And here's what I know. I was sitting in my room and I was asking God, what do you want me to speak into these people's life? And He said, I just want you to tell them to believe. There's some people that are hurting. There are some people that are confused. There are people that are wondering what's going to happen next. I said, God, it's so simple. You just want me to preach a simple word. He said, I'm simple. If you'll just believe in me, we will be able to accomplish everything together. But it's when we try to do it ourselves, it's when we fail. Believe. There's some of you today that need to reach back and you need to grab that dream. Maybe it was for you to be a singer. Maybe it was for you to have a certain career. Maybe it was for you to go off and do missions work. Maybe it was for you to be a preacher. Maybe it was for you to be a children's leader. Maybe it for you just to be an example of who God is to every one of your friends and every one of your family. I don't know what God birthed inside of you, but I know He has birthed something inside of every single one of us. God has a purpose and He has a calling and He has a will for your life, but He needs you to believe in it. God will fight for you if you'll reach out to Him. But some of us the truth is we've allowed Satan to simply smother out our dreams. And he smothered this and hid this inside of responsibility, inside of careers, inside of friends, inside of bills, inside of children. And we've had to push our dreams to the side so that we could survive. But there's something so special about just stepping out. So God, I believe. See, Abraham, God first told him that I need you and your brother, and I want you to take over, and you're going to have all this land. And I love what Abraham does. He says, all right, well, they were growing in their wealth, and they were growing continuously. He and his brother was there, and they became so wealthy that they didn't have enough land for all their sheep to graze in. And so he looks at him and he says, all right, buddy, which way do you want to go? We have to split this up because our herders are now arguing. And he says, I love Abraham because he looks at him right here, and he says, I don't care where you want to go. You can go to the east or you can go to the west. I'll simply take the land that you don't want, and I'll go there. And so what happens is he looks over and he says, well, I like this land over here. It's got a lot of springs in it, and it's a lot of grass and fertile ground. I'm going to take this ground. But see what Abraham knew is that God had promised him that it doesn't matter what side of the world you go to. It doesn't matter what ground you choose, because the promise that I've birthed in your life will come true because you believe. And then he was getting old, and he wanted a boy. He says, can I believe in this? God, I need a boy. I don't have any descendants. And God tells him, if you believe, I will give you your son. And so then they have their son. He's Abraham's pride and joy. I love this. And the father of believing, Abraham, he goes and he prays to God one day, and God tells him, I need you to make a sacrifice. And I need you to sacrifice your son. And so Abraham calls on Isaac, and he says, Isaac, come here and pick up these sticks, and we're going to head up to the mountain because we have to make a sacrifice. And if I'm Abraham right here, guys, this is going to be the hardest thing in the world for me to do. To pick up Judah and to know that I'm going to kill him when he's everything in my life. If I'm him, I'm going to pick my son up and I'm going to carry him the whole way. You know, there's scholars, some that say he was younger, some that says he was older. I don't care if he was 20, I'd try to carry him. and I was going to hold on to him. And he carries him all the way up there, just simply believing that this is what God wants him to do in his life. He doesn't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And even if he was to turn to his wife and tell his wife what God had told him to do, she would probably try to step in and not allow it to happen. And so he knew, I just have to go, and I just have to do it, and I just have to proceed because I believe in what God speaks into my life is true. I believe that it is the will for it to happen. And so he takes him up onto this mountain, and as he gets onto the mountain, he gets all the way to the point to where he's about to kill his son, and then God provides. But don't you see? Here's what God wants to say to you today. In the same manner that Abraham was willing to put his son to death, the fact that he believed, because of that, Isaac did not die. And there's a dream, and there's a hope, and there's a purpose, and there's a call inside of every one of us in this building here today. And God says, I birthed that inside of you from the point when you were born. And you need to understand, in the same way that I did not allow Isaac to die, I will not allow that dream inside of your life to die. You just have to pursue it. You have to be obedient, and you have to believe that God will do what he says he will do inside of your life. That's what I know. And so I stand here today and I continue to preach. Why? Not because it makes me a lot of money, because it doesn't. But because I know that God has put it inside my life and told me to go after it with my whole heart. And there's been times where I've almost given up. But you know what I love? I love the fact that my dad,
introduced me to speak today. Because I remember the days that I gave my parents hell. I remember it. And oh, what a joy it would be in my life for just knowing that because I believe in who God was in my son's life, that the day will come that I can stand upon a stage and introduce him to speak God's word. That's special. That's special. And what you have inside of you is special. Philippians 1:6. Be confident of this, that he who had began a good work in you will carry it out into completion until the day of Christ Jesus. What I want everyone here today to do is, if that is you, and I need you to be bold, and I need you to be brave, but if you say, I'm that person who has that dream, I'm the one that I believe God has put a gift, that God has put a talent inside of me, and I'm sorry, but I really hasn't been using it in the full manner for which I believe I should. If that's you today, here's what I want you to do. And I'm going to count to 3 in a second. I want you to stand up exactly where you're at, and I need you to just do it. If you know God has something inside of you, but life has intercepted and Satan has blocked, then today is the day that in Revelation says, Jesus makes all things new.